Welcome, everyone, to the Cinema Composite podcast, where we discuss anything and everything around the world of film. Ladies and gentlemen, it is Oscars season. The Academy Awards are broadcast on Sunday, February 9th, and we've convened an esteemed panel of experts to help you win your Oscars office pool. Now, joining me are Matt Schmitz.
Hi there.
His wife, Kat Schmitz.
Hello.
And Tom Ward.
Hi.
All right, so on today's show, we are going to go through all 24 categories and give our insight and predictions. Now, the four of us have seen almost all of the movies nominated, at least all of the major ones. We have seen all of those. And we'll hopefully offer some insight into which way the Academy is leaning. But before we start, I just wanted to talk briefly about the Academy Awards themselves. Do these awards matter?
I think after about 91 years, it's at least tradition. I don't know if it's a positive or a negative, but something we're doing, and I say, let's keep on keeping on.
Yeah, I think they matter, but I also think that people maybe put a little too much stock in them because the Academy doesn't always vote how the average moviegoer would vote. And it often, a lot of the people in the Academy don't actually watch that many of these movies, and that makes you really wonder how much we should trust their opinion.
Yeah, I would say of the 91 Best Picture winners, I think they get it wrong just about as many times as they get it right. We have winners like Casablanca, Lawrence of Arabia, The Godfather, Schindler's List, but then you also have things like Oliver and Driving Miss Daisy.
I like Oliver.
Oliver's fine, but it beat out 2001: A Space Odyssey.
Well, I was going to say that there's more snubs probably
Right.
than best films.
Even last year we had Green Book, which is, it's okay. It's an okay movie. Is it a Best Picture winner? It shouldn't be. No. But, that's the Academy.
I think the Oscars do give people the opportunity to go and see movies that they're not normally going to see, too. I know a lot of people who don't go to the movies very often, but they make it a point to see the Best Picture nominees. And if it's a year like this year where a lot of them are really solid movies, then I think the Oscars do matter, I guess.
I think we can all agree that whether or not they're super important, we all love them. We love to watch them and we love to discuss them. And for three of the four of us, it's kind of our Super Bowl.
And you say three of the four because one of us does like the Super Bowl, and that's me.
Yeah, Dan's a nerd for sports as well as movies.
Yes.
Okay, I want to start at the end, which is Best Picture. I think that's, probably the most important award. I think it might have the most debate among the four of us. So I want to put it first before we get into some of the smaller categories.
That way everyone can stop listening. They can just hear.
Exactly. If you're interested in winning your office pool, you can listen to all 24 categories. If you just want to know the top awards, that's fine too. We're here for everybody. So I'm going to read the nominees for each category, and then we can discuss what we think should win, what will win, and then maybe if there are any egregious snubs or other movies we want to talk about. So, here are the nominees for Best Picture. Ford vs. Ferrari, The Irishman, Jojo Rabbit, Joker, Little Women, Marriage Story, 1917, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and Parasite. So first, let's go around and talk about what should win. Which movie does the most for you? What are you most excited to see win?
I'll go first.
Yeah.
The one that I think should win is Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. It does sort of do that whole, playing to Hollywood. And I know some people complain that all the movies that aim right for the Hollywood people usually win. I think it's amazing. Quentin Tarantino is one of my favorite directors. It's a strong movie. You can tell that he put a lot of passion in, and I think that passion should be rewarded.
Kat, what do you think?
There were so many solid movies this year that I really enjoyed, so this was a really hard choice for me for which one should win, but I'm going to have to go with Parasite. I don't necessarily think that it's going to win, but it's something unique and interesting, and it really surprised me, and it was way better than I thought it was going to be, and I think everybody should give it a watch, so.
I am also on the Parasite train. It was my favorite movie of the year. You'll probably hear me talk more about it throughout the following categories. But as we mentioned when we did our Decade in Review podcast, Parasite is a perfect movie. Everything about it is so calculated and well thought out and well executed that it is easily my favorite.
I would agree on Parasite. I think it's the best of these 9 by far. However, I think what I would like most to win and what would give me the most joy would be Little Women. I think that'd be a super fun, out of nowhere win, especially a nice recognition for Greta Gerwig and that entire cast. It's the kind of a throwback movie to what the Oscars used to reward and not the kind of movie they do nowadays, it seems like. It would just be a really fun win for Little Women. Okay, so let's talk about what will win, and I have a couple of stats that may sway your decision. So a foreign language film has never won Best Picture. So that's kind of going against Parasite for it. A lot of people thought this would have changed last year with Roma, but that famously did not happen.
Roma also had the negative of being a Netflix movie, and the Oscars don't quite know how to deal with that.
That's true, although it does seem that the Academy is shifting a little bit more international. Parasite itself got 6 nominations this year in a lot of different categories, so that tells me that people are at least watching those films. Even something like Cold War last year got Best Cinematography as a nomination.
I personally, and I think it's just because I'm cynical, we talk about how many people on the Academy we don't think are watching all the films. I don't know how many of them are going to take the time to watch a subtitled movie. I'd like to think that they would all be open-minded enough to do that, but I know plenty of people just mentally that would never give a movie like that the time of day, which is really a shame.
I don't think you're wrong, but I do think that Parasite has been making such waves that it stands a better shot than most would.
All right, let's talk about some of the guilds. So every branch of the Academy has a guild: the Directors Guild, the Producers Guild, the Writers Guild. They have their own award shows every year, a couple weeks before the Oscars, and they kind of give some insight into what the Academy is thinking. So the PGAs, the Producers Guild of America, they have winners. 70% of all PGA winners have gone on to win Best Picture. So they've gotten the last 2 winners, Green Book and The Shape of Water, both won the PGA. It was correct 8 years in a row from 2007 to 2014. It's been a little bit different recently. The Big Short and La La Land both won this award, but did not win Best Picture, so it's not an exact science. But 1917 won the PGA this year, so take that with a grain of salt. The SAG Awards, the Screen Actors Guild, Parasite won the big award at the SAG. They don't have a Best Picture category, but they do have a Best Ensemble Cast, which kind of stands in for the Best Picture. And Parasite won that award. 11 of the 25 winners of this award have gone on to win Best Picture. So not exactly a way to predict, but know that actors make up a large chunk of the Academy. Next are the DGAs, the Directors Guild of America. 76% of the DGA winners go on to win Best Picture. It hasn't been the case the last few years. Alfonso Cuarón won last year. Damien Chazelle won in 2016 for La La Land, and neither of those won Best Picture. This year's winner for the DGAs was 1917, so it's got 2 major guild awards going for it. This is something interesting too. 93% of the time, a Best Picture winner was also nominated for Best Director. It's only happened 4 times in history and only twice since 1932 where a film has won but not been nominated for Best Director. So that effectively removes Little Women, Ford vs. Ferrari, Marriage Story, and Jojo Rabbit. One last thing before we get into it. The Academy uses a different ballot for Best Picture than they do for other awards. Rather than just giving it to the majority votes, they do a weird system called preferential ballot where everyone ranks their films 1 through 9, and then if a film has over 50% first place votes, that wins. That's very unlikely, just considering there are 9 nominees. Basically what happens then is the last place film is eliminated. So anyone who had that last place film as their number 1, their number 2 becomes their number 1, and the 3 becomes number 2, and so on. They keep doing that process until a film reaches over 50% of the first place votes. So what that effectively does is the winner of this award isn't necessarily the one that is most liked. It's usually the one that's least disliked, if that makes sense. That's why I think you get things like Green Book. It may not have been everyone's favorite choice, but it may have been second or third on a lot of people's ballots. I think something like 1917 or Once Upon a Time in Hollywood has a better shot because of this system. I think a lot of people really love Parasite, but probably not enough to push it over that hump. And I think a lot of people have something like 1917, probably like second or third, and I think that would jump up into number 1.
That makes a lot of sense.
So all that to say, all those guilds, it's looking really likely that 1917 is going to win this award.
I think almost all of us here at that table would bet that that's going to be the film.
Yeah, that's definitely the one I'd choose.
I will say the Vegas odds, I've got those pulled up. 1917 is a very strong front runner. You'd have to bet $240 to win 100.
Oh, well,
so
that's not a good deal at all.
Their second place is Parasite. So I think if you're looking for an upset, Parasite might be your pick.
Couldn't do it. Couldn't make that bet.
I do think of all the runners-up, Parasite is the one I'd go for.
I'll just say that I'm very happy that this frontrunner is 1917, a film that I didn't love, but I liked a lot, rather than Joker.
It's a safe movie. I mean, a lot of people wanted Dunkirk to win originally when that was nominated for Best Picture, and this is almost like a Dunkirk's revenge. It's a nice middle of the road, war movie that most people would be like, wow, that was a great time.
I think in terms of like a cinematic experience, if you can see 1917 in theaters, that's the best way that you can watch this movie. And I think that, like you guys said, if there's a lot of people on the Academy who haven't seen some of the nominees. 1917 is one that I'm sure most people would go ahead and see in theaters, and I think that alone gives it a huge chance of winning.
Another thing that, talking about the guilds is 1917 is a really technically impressive movie. It's not maybe the most emotionally impressive, but technically it is, and so having all these guilds that focus on one specific craft, maybe more so than others, really helps 1917.
Okay, so the four of us are all saying 1917. If you're filling out your ballot at home, I'd say that's a lock. Check that box. Any particular snubs that you want to add to this list? Films that got overlooked that you really would love for it to be nominated?
Who wants to say Uncut Gems first? Is it me?
Yeah, go for
Uncut
it.
Gems was for sure snubbed. I was not expecting that. All I heard going into it was that Adam Sandler does an amazing job, and true to form, he does. He's another one of the big Oscar snubs this year. It's a complete snub. Maybe it came in at the last minute. Do you think that's a logical excuse?
I think it's a little bit of that. I think it's a weird movie for a lot of people, and I also think it's distributed by A24, which is a studio we love, but I don't think they put a lot of money into their marketing for award season.
Uncut Gems is the type of movie that I really loved, and I tell people to go and see, but I also don't think that it would be super well liked by a wide range of audience. I think it was snubbed, but I also wouldn't have expected it to win, so it's not heartbreaking to me that it didn't get the nomination.
It's also interesting to consider snubs, because for something to be snubbed, you have to think it's better than what's in that category. And like I mentioned before, Joker and Jojo Rabbit are kind of mine, where I think Uncut Gems definitely deserved a place over that. I would have liked to see something like The Farewell sneak in there, because that was such a wonderfully personal film that it really deserves more attention.
I think The Farewell or Uncut Gems could have replaced Jojo Rabbit easily.
Yeah, I agree. I also think something like Knives Out would have been a fun addition, something that's maybe a little bit more of a popcorn movie, but also just really well done. And I even wrote down Avengers Endgame on my list. It's not my favorite movie in the world, but you have to acknowledge like what it achieved. And if Black Panther can get nominated last year, I think Avengers Endgame should be in there too.
It feels really good to hear you say that, Dan. I appreciate that.
I think bringing up Knives Out is a good point too. That's like the perfect movie that I've been telling people is the best cross between a movie that's very well done, but also well liked by pretty much anyone.
Okay, let's go on to Best Director. It is kind of the companion piece to Best Picture. The director does direct these films. There are 5 nominees. They are Martin Scorsese for The Irishman, Todd Phillips for Joker, Sam Mendes for 1917, Quentin Tarantino, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and Bong Joon-ho for Parasite. So who do you want to win out of those 5?
I would love for Greta Gerwig to win. Oh, wait.
Good luck to you.
Yeah.
No, but I think Quentin Tarantino, well, I'm not sure that he'll pull out the win for this. This is the movie that he's gotten the most nominations for, and he's never scored Best Director, and if anything could do it, I think this has a good shot.
Especially since he only has one more movie in him, supposedly.
Parasite was my number one, so I'm all for Bong Joon-ho. I think that this is such a culmination of his previous films, and a lot of the things that he got right in those add up to this wonderful experience.
No, I would agree with both of you guys. I think Bong Joon-ho is amazing, and that movie's amazing. Quentin Tarantino as well, I think, does some of his best work, especially when we're so familiar with his career. To see him pull this off, I think is really cool. I mean, honestly, and Martin Scorsese is no slouch either.
That's true. But God knows he needs another one on his mantle.
Yeah, although he only has, I think just one.
Just one?
Yeah, I think he only has for The Departed.
Yeah, and I was just going to say, I think this is a category that I really wouldn't be devastated if any of them took it. So
Absolutely.
I'd be a little sad if Todd Phillips pulled this out, just because of the clout that these other 4 have.
That's fair.
And Joker is well made. I don't think it's well directed.
The thing with Todd Phillips is that it would be offensive for him to take it over Martin Scorsese, because he's just doing a Scorsese pastiche.
Absolutely.
that's fair.
All right, so it seems like this is going to be a 2-horse race between Sam Mendes and Bong Joon-ho. I think if the Academy wants to honor Tarantino, it'll probably do so in the screenplay category. I think that's a little bit more natural for him. And up until last week, I thought Bong Joon-ho would be the pick, just because the last couple of years, they've given Cuarón Best Director, but then something else for Best Picture. I thought maybe Bong Joon-ho would be, this is kind of the flashy director pick, but then we'll give something safe for Best Picture. Although last weekend, Sam Mendes won the DGA, and the DGA is a pretty good predictor on who's going to win this. So my vote is with Sam Mendes for 1917.
I'd take the upset vote on that. I do think Bong Joon-ho will win. I think they are going to keep doing basically what you just described, how they know he's not going to win Best Picture, but they'll throw him the vote for director.
I think this one's probably going to Sam Mendes. Like I said, it's just a technically impressive movie, and it really seems like it's right up the Academy's alley.
I agree with you guys. I think Sam Mendes has got it.
I'm fine with him winning. I think it's a really impressive work. I do feel like a lot of the most impressive stuff in the movie, though, is Roger Deakins and cinematography and some of the camera work. I don't know if that's necessarily Sam Mendes, but I think that's probably where it's leaning. So it looks like we got 3 votes for Mendes, 1 for Bong Joon-ho.
Correct.
Any particular snubs you want to mention here?
Greta Gerwig should have been nominated, and I'm going to say she should have won because she is so good.
I agree. I also think Noah Baumbach would be an interesting choice just because it's a different kind of directing. It's not the flashy of 1917. It's directing actors to be their best, and that's what he does in Marriage Story. I also have a couple other ones, like the Safdie brothers we mentioned. Ari Aster, I think, is a really talented director. Even if you didn't like Midsummer, I think it's really directed well.
I'd like to think down the line he might get more
I'm sure
recognition.
he will. And then another one is Ryan Johnson for Knives Out. I think that's just a really impeccably directed film.
Absolutely.
All right, we're going to move on to supporting actor. The nominees are Tom Hanks for A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood, Anthony Hopkins, The Two Popes, Al Pacino, The Irishman, Joe Pesci, The Irishman, and Brad Pitt, The Irishman? No, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
I mean, talk about a stacked category right there. Every single one of them is an absolute star.
What I think is the most interesting thing about this list of names, and is the reason why I'm going with Brad Pitt for the win, is that every single one of these guys, except for Brad Pitt, has gotten a win. So I think it's Brad Pitt's time.
I agree. Brad Pitt, this is his sort of moment to shine. I don't know if he's ever going to get it again, but I think he'll get it.
He does have an Oscar. It's just for Best Picture. He produced it. So no acting Oscars.
Good to know.
But
Good to know.
For me, I think the person I love the most out of these 5 is probably Joe Pesci, actually. I don't think he's going to have a shot just because I think the Al Pacino-Joe Pesci might split some votes there since it's both from The Irishman.
I did love little old man Pesci.
It
he
is.
was adorable.
And I think he does the most interesting work of these 5 just because we have the expectation of what he does, and he subverts that so well while also kind of being the same Joe Pesci. I just think it's a really interesting performance, and it's great to have him back. I'm happy with Brad Pitt, too, and I think it will happen. He won the Golden Globe. He won the SAG Award, as well as a bunch of other critic awards. And like you said, he's not won an Oscar before, and the Academy does like to reward people if they've kind of, paid their dues.
This will be one of those for sure. I think he will win, and I want him to win.
Yeah. Any actors you'd wish that were nominated? This is a pretty stacked cast, so it is hard
to beat that.
Yeah.
The only person I could think of that really deserved to be in there that, wasn't already in there was Song Kang-ho, who played the dad in Parasite. I mean, the whole cast of Parasite is really phenomenal, but if there was one standout, it was him.
It's really a shame there isn't a cast award in the Academy Awards because that would clearly win.
Another one I had was Willem Dafoe from The Lighthouse. It's just such a crazy performance, and it's kind of fun.
Willem Dafoe gives probably one of the best monologues of the year in The Lighthouse.
For a movie that's just him and Robert Pattinson, speaking gibberish at each other and then getting increasingly angry and frustrated, it's an incredible performance.
I want that to be the synopsis of that film.
Somebody asked me what that was about the other day at work. They were like, "Oh, I saw that you watched The Lighthouse. What's that about?" And I think I just sat there in silence for like 3 minutes staring at them.
All right, supporting actress, Kathy Bates for Richard Jewell, Laura Dern, Marriage Story, Scarlett Johansson, Jojo Rabbit, Florence Pugh, Little Women, Margot Robbie, Bombshell. I would say just off the bat, it's not a super strong year for supporting actress.
No, it is not.
I really only have one person that I feel gung-ho about, and that's Florence Pugh. I really love Laura Dern, but a lot of times when I watch Laura Dern, I can't tell if she's doing a good job or I'm just happy because it's Laura Dern. And then, some of the other performances, Margot Robbie and Kathy Bates, they're fine. I wasn't blown away by either of them this year.
I feel like it was a lot of performances that were like, that was good.
Laura Dern is interesting because she's kind of the front runner here. She's good in Marriage Story. She's basically playing the same character as she plays in Big Little Lies, I felt like. I also think she's almost better in Little Women.
I agree. I would have loved to see her nominated for Little Women. Whereas for Marriage Story, yeah, okay, sure.
While I don't think she did a bad job or anything, I feel like I can't imagine rooting for her to win this, but then not rooting for anybody else for Marriage Story. She would be just fine winning this, but if she wins this, I'm like, well, then Like, why wouldn't Adam Driver win? Why wouldn't Scarlett Johansson win? Why wouldn't,
Yeah, she's not the focal point of the movie by far.
I think all of the nominations are pretty forgettable, and that's why I have really no opinion on who I think should win. If I had to bet, I'm going to go with Laura Dern.
All right, so Laura Dern won the SAG Award and the Golden Globe. She seems like a front runner. We're all locking that in. 4 of us, Laura Dern.
Laura Dern.
All right. Any snubs here in this category?
This is where I feel bad saying it's not a super strong category because I don't know if there was anyone else that really jumped out.
There's no memorable performance. I agree with you 1,000%.
I have 4 here, just throwing it out there. I don't
Show me what
I
you
don't
got.
know if they're better necessarily, but just 4 that could have been nominated. Jennifer Lopez for Hustlers was somebody that everyone thought was going to be nominated. I didn't love that movie, but she is good in it.
When I saw Jennifer Lopez in Hustlers in that fur coat on that rooftop, I wanted to be that fur coat wrapped around Jennifer Lopez.
I was pretty surprised that she didn't get nominated. I begrudgingly say she does do a good job in that movie. It's just not a good movie, so I'm happy it didn't get nominated.
Another one is Xu Zhenjiao. Is that how I would say it? I'm not exactly sure. From The Farewell. She plays the grandma in The Farewell. I just think she does a really good job. Another one is Margot Robbie, not for Bombshell, but for Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. She famously does not have a lot of lines in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, but you could say that she really carries the movie in a lot of ways. Her spirit, her just like body language, a lot of times in scenes just kind of makes the movie what it is.
She is like the person that you're thinking about throughout the entire movie, pretty much, at least for me.
And then the 4th one is Caitlin Dever from Booksmart. She plays kind of the sidekick to Beanie Feldstein. I just think it'd be kind of a fun performance to nominate because it's not what you typically nominate for this category.
Yeah, she was great. And it was a movie that feels very natural and probably people didn't realize how impressive a performance it actually was.
I think that's one with over time more people will point to.
It's funny because there's so many movies this year that I almost like didn't forget about, but we're bringing up like Knives Out and Booksmart, and I'm like, hey, why didn't they get nominated for more stuff or anything?
All right, Best Actor, we have 5 nominees, obviously. Antonio Banderas for Pain and Glory, Leonardo DiCaprio, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, Adam Driver for Marriage Story, Joaquin Phoenix, Joker, and Jonathan Pryce, The Two Popes. What do you want to win?
My vote goes with Antonio Banderas all the way. I thought it was the most affecting performance I saw this year.
I would agree. That's an awesome movie, and that movie totally only works because of his performance.
And I kind of forget how captivating he is on screen. I mean, it's really hard to not be drawn in by him.
I'll change directions on that and go with Leonardo DiCaprio. I know he's finally got his Oscar for The Revenant, but I think he deserves another one here. This performance is incredibly solid. In some ways, you can just see him falling apart. He is an aging actor, and so for him to go through those paces and like truly live it on screen, I just thought it was a great performance.
I agree. I think Adam Driver did a really good job in Marriage Story, and I think he'll get his shot one day, but I think Leonardo DiCaprio is pretty much like quintessential great performance. I remember watching the trailer for this and being like, he's going to get a nom for this movie.
So I would agree. I'm split between DiCaprio and Banderas, although Adam Driver does give a really cool performance in Marriage Story.
It's a great subtle performance.
Yeah. All right, so now we go to what will win. And I think we all pretty much agree on this, at least from where I'm sitting. I think it's going to be Joaquin Phoenix.
It's a real hard push. From everyone I've heard that's who's going to win.
And I think that's just fine. I think if the Joker is going to get recognized for anything this year, it should be for Joaquin Phoenix's performance.
You know, I've stated before, Joker was not my favorite, but I generally did like his performance in it. My issues stem from other things entirely. It's frustrating for people to win awards for movies that I don't like, even when it's not their fault.
Almost what you're trying to say is that even though the movie might not be so good, his level of acting he brings to it is his own special thing.
Yeah, well, it's also frustrating because Joaquin Phoenix is one of my favorite actors, and he's had so many great performances. I don't think this is his best one. I think he's a lot better in things like The Master. You know, it's great that he's going to win an award, and I'm happy for him. I also don't love that this award seems to always go to the most acting, not necessarily the best acting. Like, he's doing the most. He's lost a ton of weight. He's acting crazy. That's really great for that character, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's the best.
Agreed.
Joaquin's won both the SAG Award and the Golden Globe, so he is pretty much a lock. If I look at the Vegas odds right now, you would need to bet $2,200 to win 100. So looking like a pretty sure lock.
He's got it.
All right, any snubs for this year for Best Actor?
I mean, I think we can all agree on who the big snub was this year, and that was obviously Adam Sandler in Uncut Gems.
Absolutely, and now he has to make a bad movie.
I
don't know how he'll do it.
I think if he would have been nominated for this category, he would have been hands down my pick for who should have won. It was definitely him at his best, and I think it's a shame that he wasn't recognized for it.
I don't know how many of those he's got in him. I'd like to think a lot more, but we'll see.
Another one for me was Robert De Niro. I mean, if you're going to nominate Pesci and Pacino for The Irishman, I think De Niro is just as good. He kind of got squeezed out here because it's a strong category, but he does really some of his best work in the last, I'd say, 10, 15 years.
Even though he did get squeezed out, I don't feel bad about it.
No, he's obviously been decorated and he's had a great career, but I think it's definitely someone who could have been nominated.
I would have loved to see Robert Pattinson get one for The Lighthouse. Again, it's a really impressive, two-man show.
I don't think I would have ever bet on that getting the nom, but
No.
he does do a phenomenal job.
All right, Best Actress, Cynthia Erivo for Harriet, Scarlett Johansson, Marriage Story, Saoirse Ronan, Little Women, Charlize Theron, Bombshell, and Renee Zellweger, Judy. Any favorites you'd like to win?
I mean, I feel like this is another scenario where Renee Zellweger does a really great job as Judy, but again, just like not the best movie, so it's really hard to root for. She does an incredible performance, but I don't know. She's probably going to get it.
Saoirse Ronan all the way. She's my favorite in this category.
I love Saoirse Ronan, and I think this is her 4th nomination for acting already,
Yeah,
and she's like 24.
She has won one before, though, has she
No,
not?
she has not.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's
she's-
surprising. She's got a long road ahead of her, so I wouldn't be shocked if she doesn't win it, but she's super strong.
Mm-hmm.
I know like one day she's definitely going to get it. It's just,
I don't think it's going
I
to be
don't
this
know.
one.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
don't
she
know
could
if
be
it's
our
gonna-
generation's Meryl Streep.
Absolutely. I personally think Renee Zellweger should win for Judy. Again, it isn't the best movie, but it's a stellar performance. I really enjoyed it.
If Renee Zellweger were to win this, she would be the 10th oldest actress to ever win Best Actress.
Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah.
I'm glad I saw Judy because I was kind of bracing myself to be disappointed in this award because I knew she was going to win. And I was like, it's just kind of a boring role and a boring movie. I'm glad I saw it because it did show me how good she really is in that. So I'm not going to be mad that when she does win, it is just kind of the safe choice.
She's a lock for that.
Although last year we had a lock for this category as well. Glenn Close had won every acting award leading up to the Oscars. She was the odds-on favorite by a long shot, and then she was upset by Olivia Colman for Best Actress. So anything can happen.
Do you have any stats or reasons why that might have happened?
No.
Okay, that's fair. I thought you might.
Well, so the difference between that last year and this year is last year, at least Olivia Colman was a solid second place in that list. I think a lot of people liked Olivia Colman in that role. This year, if someone's going to upset Renee Zellweger, I don't know which of the 4 it would be. I don't know if there's a clear second place between these.
Has Vegas odds given any indication of who it might be?
Vegas has Scarlett Johansson as the second place, but Charlize close behind. But they're all right in there.
Okay.
I just don't think that there's any, if all of a sudden everyone was like Saoirse Ronan's the number 2, then maybe I'd say Saoirse Ronan might have a shot, but I just don't think that's going to happen. Any snubs for Best Actress?
I think the biggest snub was Lupita Nyong'o.
Yes.
I mean, I look at her performance in Us, and I think she does just as good of a job, if not better, than some of the other nominees in this category.
And she has 2 roles in that movie, really.
Right.
The other snub is Awkwafina, whose performance in The Farewell is really beautiful.
Okay, as we continue on, Best Original Screenplay. The nominees are Ryan Johnson for Knives Out, Noah Baumbach for Marriage Story, Sam Mendes and Christy Wilson Cairns for 1917, Quentin Tarantino, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and Bong Joon-ho and Han Jin-won for Parasite. This is a fun category. There's 4 strong contenders. I'm not entirely sure why 1917 is here, other than to kind of cement itself as a Best Picture contender, because the script is not really what makes that movie go. It's basically just there to get characters from point A to point B. But I think the other 4 are really solid. We are taping this podcast a few days before the Writers Guild Awards, so we don't have any insight into what the writers are going for. Just know that the winner of the WGA typically wins this award. However, this year, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is not nominated for a WGA, and that is because Quentin Tarantino is not part of the Writers Guild. So I think Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is probably the frontrunner here, so maybe don't pay attention to the WGAs. Who knows?
I agree. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood has probably the best shot at winning, though really all of them are absolute winners.
I do think Quentin Tarantino will win the best screenplay for this. It's not going to win Best Picture, so this is sort of the placeholder award that he will for sure win this year.
Definitely.
Yeah, I completely agree, and I do think he deserves it. I'd be totally happy to see Parasite or Knives Out win, but I I really do think this is his award.
All right. Any snubs for best original screenplay? I had two, Robert and Max Eggers for The Lighthouse, just because the dialogue in that is so rich, and they obviously spent a lot of time on that.
Not only that, just the research they put into those movies.
And my other one is Pedro Almodovar for Pain and Glory. I think that's a very personal screenplay for him. Just a lot of really great scenes in that movie.
I also think The Farewell. It's a really beautiful personal story for the writer director, and it was incredibly well done.
I think maybe The Last Black Man in San Francisco should have gotten a nom.
Yeah. Definitely.
I would agree with Last Black Man in San Francisco. It's a very unique story, and in a lot of ways kind of reminded me of Do the Right Thing.
I actually didn't love the script in that movie. I loved the visuals and the style of it. I thought the script was a little heavy-handed, and it went in some weird places that I didn't really follow. All right, moving on to Best Adapted Screenplay. Steve Zalian for The Irishman, Taika Waititi for Jojo Rabbit, Todd Phillips and Scott Silver for Joker, Greta Gerwig for Little Women, Anthony McCartan for The Two Popes. What do we want to win on this one? I think it's pretty obvious, but I'll throw it out to you guys.
Little Women, and I cannot stress this enough, it is the least that they could do for Greta Gerwig.
Little Women is what we want to win. I think it will win. It is the front runner right now. The second place movie right now is Jojo Rabbit, which is kind of interesting. I'm not sure exactly how much of a chance that would have, but
That's not one I would have considered at all. That's an odd choice.
if anything, I would think the safe Academy choice would be The Two Popes. It's just a very classic Hollywood script between, two very distinguished actors.
I think the Little Women is the safer bet. I mean, it's a piece of classic literature, perfectly adapted from what I've been told.
Yeah.
I will be shocked and enraged if Little Women doesn't get this.
They wouldn't dare.
It wouldn't be the first time we've been shocked and enraged at the Oscars.
That is fair.
Suicide Squad, Oscar-winning movie.
Which, speaking of movies that should have been nominated for Best Adapted Screenplay, I'd go with Endgame. I mean, to have the Infinity Saga, in movie form, I don't think you could have done it any better.
That's actually not a bad choice, because they're like the best thing about that movie, I think, is the way it structures the story and kind of interweaves different characters and juggles so many characters.
So many. You will never see that again in a future movie.
I agree. It was really clever, and I would have loved to see them get some recognition for that.
The other snub I had was Christian Petzold for Transit. I think it's based on an old World War II book that he kind of brought into a more modern setting. I think it's just a really cool script, really cool movie. All right, moving on. Best International Feature Film. Nominees are Corpus Christi from, I think, Poland, Honeyland from North Macedonia, Les Miserables from France, Pain and Glory from Spain, and Parasite from South Korea.
I think we all know Parasite will win. To be nominated in international and then also Best Picture feels like a pretty obvious sign that you should win that category.
And it should win. It's the best movie by far.
Absolutely.
But yeah, all respect to these other films, Parasite's going to win this.
As far as snubs go, you just brought up Transit by Christian Petzold, and I actually would have liked to see that get a nomination.
I would say almost for the whole, sea or sailor speak that we heard in The Lighthouse, it could have got nominated for its own language, but I doubt it.
A couple other ones from me. I really loved Birds of Passage. It's a film from Colombia. Atlantics. It's on Netflix. It's a film from Senegal. And One Cut of the Dead. It's a horror comedy zombie film from Japan, which is really fun.
Set in Senegal.
No, it is set in Japan.
Oh, I got you.
All right, moving on to more of the technical awards. Best Cinematography. We have Rodrigo Prieto for The Irishman, Lawrence Sher for Joker, Jarin Blaschke for The Lighthouse, Roger Deakins, 1917, and Robert Richardson, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
While I'd love to see this go to The Lighthouse, I think 1917's got it. The continuous shot concept is pretty amazing to see, and I just don't see it going anywhere else.
Yeah, it's interesting. Roger Deakins famously was nominated for years and years for Oscars and never won. He finally won a couple years ago for Blade Runner 2049, and now he's going to win his second in 3 years.
Good for him.
And he absolutely deserves it. It's a technical marvel, but I am very, very happy that The Lighthouse was nominated because it is so strong in its images. It's black and white and its Academy ratio and just very intense and weird imagery.
It's really awesome, but I think if you're going to go with the theory that 1917 is going to have a good night and win Best Director and Best Picture, it's obviously going to win Best Cinematography too. Even if it doesn't have that good a night, I think this is a lock. Like, go to Vegas right now and bet this.
Absolutely.
Some snubs. I just had a couple. Parasite isn't on here, and I think that has an actually really awesome cinematography. Ad Astra, interesting movie visually, and then other one was Midsummer.
I had Midsommar as well. It's really impressive that they could shoot a movie like that in such like bright white light and have it look so good, because you just don't get that very often.
Yeah, you never see a daytime horror film.
Right.
And that is the one.
And I mean, it's trippy and out there, but it is really good.
Even if you don't like the story all that much, which I wasn't a huge fan, the visuals you cannot deny are stunning. Another movie we mentioned was Last Black Man in San Francisco. The cinematography in that was phenomenal. Again,
really
if
is.
you don't like the story, it's a beautiful film to just have on in the background.
Yeah. All right, best editing. We have Michael McCusker and Andrew Buckland for Ford versus Ferrari, Thelma Schumacher for The Irishman, Tom Eagles for Jojo Rabbit, Jeff Groth, Joker, and Yang Jinmo, Parasite. Obviously, Parasite is my favorite for a lot of these categories, and I think it should win just because there's a 5-minute sequence in the middle of this movie that is so meticulously edited and is so perfect. It's just like, it's a masterclass in how you edit a sequence.
That one sequence you're talking about is so impressive, and you watch it and your jaw just kind of drops because there's such a specific rhythm to it, and you feel that rhythm as you're watching it without even understanding why.
It did have a fantastic rhythm. It reminded me of The Sting in terms of like watching a con being pulled off. I'm not going to spoil it, but it's phenomenal.
I'm going to go with Thelma Schoonmaker. You know, she's gotten 8 nominations in the past, and 3 of them have been with Scorsese. So I think they clearly make a good pair together, and I could see her taking it home for The Irishman for this.
I like that too because the movie is 3.5 hours long, and it feels like every scene is so necessary. In terms of what will win, I think a dark horse here is Ford versus Ferrari. That's a very technical film. The editing during those race car sequences is really good.
I think that's probably the most likely winner here. I think that's one where editors are going to watch that and think, okay, I see how they did that. That was really impressive, and it's going to gain a lot of traction because of that.
For what it's worth, there is an Editors Guild Awards. They're called the Eddies. They were a couple weeks ago.
That's why we haven't heard of them. That's great.
They are not televised, but they split their award into both comedy editing and drama editing. Parasite won for drama, and Jojo Rabbit won for comedy. So it's not an exact predictor of the Oscar, but know that Parasite does have that going for it. So I think this is probably our closest race we've had thus far.
I'd also like to imagine that the Eddies runs for like 4 hours and they just have a terrible time editing it.
According to Vegas, Parasite is the favorite, but Ford versus Ferrari is very close behind. If you're filling out your bracket right now, that's a toss-up. Pick one that you like better. All right, we got to keep moving. Best original score, Hildur Guðnadóttir.
Wow.
One more
He's
time
had
for the
this
fans.
whole week to practice, and this is what he fucking brings us.
Tom, you want to say that one more time?
Hildur Guðnadóttir.
Okay, she's Icelandic, but that's for Joker. Alexander Desplat for Little Women. Randy Newman, Marriage Story. Thomas Newman, 1917. John Williams, The Rise of Skywalker. It's the battle of the Newman cousins. They've waited their entire life for this showdown.
Who would have thought Randy Newman would still be cranking them out since You've Got a Friend in Me?
He is a surprising master. You forget he's actually really good.
He's a treasure.
He is, and he did Toy Story 4 this year as well, which is classic. But Marriage Story's score is actually really influential in that movie, I'd say.
For such a serious movie, I would have loved just one You Got level of song in Marriage Story to just throw the tone off.
Any other thoughts of who you'd want to win this award?
I think it's kind of hard to argue with John Williams' 52 Oscar nominees.
But does he need another one?
I don't think he needs another one. And I mean, I'm the last person who's going to defend a Star Wars movie, but come at me, nerds.
I would say Thomas Newman, for me, the score in 1917 is a little heavy-handed, but when it hits, it's emotional. Like that last climactic scene, I think a lot of it is the music, and Thomas Newman does a really good job there.
That's kind of why I don't want Thomas Newman, because there are just a few too many moments where it's kind of heavy-handed.
I sadly can't think of any score that I really remembered, to tell you the truth. Just me being me, what I really remember is the Sinatra songs being in Joker, but in terms of music in a movie, at no point did I really cling to any themes that I heard.
I actually really liked the Little Women score. I thought it fit really well with the movie as a whole, and Desplat is a very, decorated.
Now that you say that, I do remember liking the piano, and I'm a sucker for some simple piano in a film.
In terms of what will win, the favorite right now is Joker. I'm not going to say her name again. Her name's Hildur. I don't know the last name. I did go to Iceland this year. I had a very hard time pronouncing things.
Look where we are now.
She is the favorite in terms of Vegas. Do you guys think anyone else can pull off the upset?
No, I think that one's a pretty clear-cut win.
Although I would say if 1917 does go on this momentous sweep and just takes all these awards, maybe this is one they pick up as well.
For Snow, snubs, and I know I was talking about themes earlier, the themes that were repeated in Avengers Endgame from all the other past movies, I would have liked a nomination. I know he wouldn't have won, but Alan Silvestri, I think, deserves some credit for pulling all the themes of past movies together.
Yeah, I mean, that's fair. I mean, if John Williams can be nominated for Star Wars, I think he can be too.
Totally fair.
My snub here is it's my turn to bring up Last Black Man in San Francisco. That score really, really stuck with me. You know, there are some other non-original musical performances in that, but the score is beautiful. It works really well with the cinematography.
I agree. That was like one of the big takeaways that I had from that movie.
My one I would have liked to have in here is Daniel Lopatin for Uncut Gems. That soundtrack just drives that movie. It's just like this 80s synth. It just fits with that character.
It might have fit so well that's why I didn't notice it. Now that you're bringing that up, I'm having flashbacks that kind of scare me. And like, that was actually pretty great.
Yeah.
Something like that is not something that you listen to and it's nice and pretty. It's something that you listen to and you have anxiety. So it works really well as a score, but it's not something you have such fond feelings about after.
Yeah, it's no Randy Newman. All right, moving on to Best Original Song. I have a rant on this one, but we'll get to the nominees first. They are I Can't Let You Throw Yourself Away from Toy Story 4, I'm Gonna Love Me Again, Rocket Man, I'm Standing With You from Breakthrough, and Into the Unknown from Frozen 2, and Stand Up from Harriet.
I could do my own 2-hour-long podcast of how bad Breakthrough was.
We just want to give credit. We, the four of us, kind of split up all the movies. We wanted to make sure we got coverage in all these Oscar-nominated movies. Kat courageously watched Breakthrough for us. Kat, give us like a 30-second summary of this movie.
You know what? I actually have an entire notepad on here, all filled with thoughts that I had during this movie.
And of course, you watched this movie for the song, and I'm sure that played during the credits. Am I correct?
It did.
Okay.
So I'm really glad that I sat through. Oh, I knew that Breakthrough was going to be a very special movie when during the intro credits, they cut the part out of Uptown Funk that said hot damn. So it would go like too hot and then just have that really awkward silence for like 3 to 5 seconds afterwards. The whole thing was really upsetting.
Yikes.
So.
Okay, here's my rant. Number one, this category, get rid of it. It's not an Oscar category. There are so many better categories that are related to movies. Like we talked about, like best stunt performance that actually is related to a movie. This is a Grammy category. Make it a Grammy category. You can say best song that's in a movie. Great.
I'd agree with that. That's fair.
Number two, if we're going to keep it, we don't need to hear all 5 of these performances at the Oscars.
No.
It takes up like 25 minutes, 30 minutes of the show, and it's already precious time. It feels rushed. You know, if there was like a special song like last year we had Shallow with Lady Gaga, great, perform that quick. Let, maybe 1 or 2 get in there if it's a really established song. But otherwise, you do not need to waste a half hour of the Oscars. Okay, number 3, I think any song that plays during the credits of a movie should be disqualified from this category. The credits are not making the movie. I think 4 out of the 5 of these play over the credits, if I'm not wrong. They don't add anything. They should not be there. They're only there to pick up an Oscar. And finally, part of my rant, there's a movie called Wild Rose. I really love Wild Rose. It's not for everybody, but it has music in it, and there is a song in it, and the song is great, and it actually matters for the plot of the movie, and it is not nominated here.
The only thing I think that hurts you there is that it does play for a smidge over the credits, so I don't know if you'd cancel out your own rule.
Well, we'll have some loopholes.
Sorry, guys. I was going to try to warn you all that they're going to freak out about Wild Rose.
It's a great movie. Go watch it. It's on Hulu.
Just for the music.
So rant over. Someone fix this award. We do not need songs in the Oscars, and now I just wasted 5 minutes on this podcast talking about it.
That's fair. If they made it this far, they're in it to win it, Dan.
Do we have any thoughts on who will win or who you want to win?
I think that Rocket Man, the song for Rocket Man will win. I literally don't remember it. And so for that reason, I'd have to say Frozen 2 for the win because I actually know that one.
I got to give it to the song from Rocket Man just because when I read it, I can never remember what it is, but whenever I read it, I can hear it in my head. So that's why I'm going to say it will win.
The Academy definitely wants to honor him, and the other songs are whatever. We don't have a clear front runner here.
It was either that or a Lifetime Achievement Award, and I think they're going to go with this.
All right, Best Production Design. We have The Irishman, Jojo Rabbit, 1917, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and Parasite. Personally, I think Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is probably the pick here. I love how they've really just completely remade this 1969 LA world.
It's so tightly packaged.
It is.
It's amazing.
And there was a lot of, press about how Tarantino literally recreated entire blocks of the city to look exactly how it looked back in the day.
I think it was probably the most impressive and the most memorable of the of the various production design nominees.
It's the closest you get to a time machine at certain points. He nailed it.
Another really strong contender is Parasite, because that movie basically revolves around that house, and it's so perfectly designed. It's not as big and flashy as Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, but I would argue that it's maybe more important to the movie.
I was going to give an honorable mention to 1917. The sets with the trenches and the countryside all in coordination with the camera shots was, pretty amazing. But like you guys, I would give it to Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
In terms of what will win, I think Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is the favorite, and it's looking pretty likely that it'll win this one.
Would you tell me the Vegas odds for that?
Vegas odds are Once Upon a Time in Hollywood minus 250, 1917 in second place plus 300. So pretty good odds that Once Upon a Time in Hollywood wins this, but you never know. There could be an upset. 1917, like we've talked about, I could see a scenario where this just cleans up all of these awards.
Sure.
Any snubs for this category? The only ones I kind of thought of were Ad Astra, just kind of a unique sci-fi movie. We talked about Midsummer, Little Women, and Knives Out. Just the house in Knives Out, I think, is kind of a cool design.
I wouldn't be me if I didn't throw Endgame in there
Sure,
one more
of
time.
course.
I mean,
I would argue, though,
a culmination of
watching
all these
some of those
films.
behind the scenes, I feel like the entire production design was all computerized. Even some scenes of them in the lab, it was all CGI.
Well, you know what? I'll walk this one back for you, Dan, because I've got another Endgame in that I'm saving up. Okay. So I'll back down on this one.
Moving on, costume design: Sandy Powell and Christopher Pearson for The Irishman, Maze C. Rubio for Jojo Rabbit, Mark Bridges, Joker, Jacqueline Duran, Little Women, Ariane Phillips, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
I'm going to have to go with Little Women. I feel like I watched this movie and the entire time was just absolutely in awe over the costume design.
100% agree.
I would agree with that because it is sort of the classic pick.
Yeah.
All of those, the period piece clothing.
It feels like the Academy likes to award the oldest costumes from the oldest time period, and Little Women is the oldest of these movies, taking place in the 1860s. So I think that is the pick, and that is the front runner right now. So Little Women for this category. Any stumps for costume, Matt? I think I know where this is going.
Yeah, this is the one I was saving up for. Endgame should be nominated. I mean, there's so many heroes.
Are you talking about when they all wear the same one?
Not that part. You know the part I'm talking about.
And didn't they CGI those costumes on? I'm pretty sure I saw that.
So does that negate it if they're CGI'd costumes?
It's still designed, but I don't know if that counts.
I mean, you've got so many characters with such iconic costumes.
Yeah, but I feel like all those costumes were already designed in previous movies.
Well, okay, then give me this. Just let it get nominated. It doesn't have to win.
No, I'm not giving you that.
I think there are a lot of categories where it could have been nominated. I do not think this is one of them.
Okay.
All right, best makeup and hairstyling: Kazuhiro and Morgan and Vivian Baker for Bombshell, Nikki Lederman and Kay Georgiou for Joker, Jeremy Woodhead for Judy, Paul Gooch, Arjun Tutin, and David White for Maleficent, Mistress of Evil, and Naomi Dawn, Tristan Versulis, and Rebecca Cole, 1917. I probably butchered a lot of those names, but doesn't really matter. Makeup and hairstyling, who do you got?
I think it'll probably go to the Joker. I don't know if it deserves it, but I could see it going to them.
Not to toot my own horn, but I just want to say that I also endured Maleficent, Mistress of Evil for you guys. That's true.
Kat has an iron stomach.
It was really rough.
How would you rate the hairstyling in that movie?
In terms of a live action Disney movie, it was probably the worst one I've seen. But in terms of hair and makeup for it, I mean, it's just exactly what you'd expect. It was just fine, but it doesn't deserve the win for this. I was going to say Bombshell. I think if it wins anything, this is it. I remember seeing the trailers for this and having to do a double take because Charlize Theron looked literally exactly like Megyn Kelly.
It's a little creepy because it is so like that. And I think that is the pick here. I think the Academy likes to award movie stars that look like real people. Not just her, but John Lithgow playing Roger Ailes. There's a lot of makeup going on there. I would say Judy and Joker are probably the dark horses here.
Part of me also wants to give it to the Gooch. I think he could really pull out a win.
That's for Maleficent, Mistress of Evil, Paul Gooch.
That's right.
I was also going to make that joke.
Vegas has Bombshell as a pretty odds-on favorite there.
Could you please tell me what the stellar odds on the Gooch is?
For Paul Gooch, Maleficent Mistress of Evil, plus 3,300. So it is
What would I win if I bet $100?
$3,300.
Oh, that's how math works.
Yep. Okay. All right. We're going on to the sound categories, sound editing and sound mixing. Just as a reminder, sound editing is about collecting the sounds for a movie. Sound mixing is what you do with those sounds collected. So sound editing, Ford versus Ferrari, Joker, 1917, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker.
It's really hard to gauge sound editing because, if they're doing their job well, it all feels very natural. But I think that 1917 really does deserve it for that.
It'll probably win for that, but that is sort of the classic war movie, so I'm not super thrilled about that.
I would agree, though, because I watched the behind the scenes of 1917 and the way they had to film it, with the moving camera, they weren't able to capture a lot of live sound, so almost everything is added in after the fact.
That's a good point.
And that's really what sound editing is.
I actually think that Ford v Ferrari might actually have the edge here. It is impressive. I wouldn't be mad about that in any way.
In terms of sound mixing, we actually have the same nominees. You take out Rise of Skywalker and you add in Ad Astra. So Ford vs. Ferrari, Joker, 1917, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and Ad Astra. So it's likely we often see a pair of the same winners between these two awards. So if you picked Ford versus Ferrari in editing, you might want to pick it here, or vice versa for 1917.
I do think it's going to be a package deal.
So I would stick with 1917 here. I think it would have the momentum, but you never know. This could be an easy Ford versus Ferrari sweep between these two. Any other thoughts? Do we have consensus? Are we all saying 1917?
I think the consensus is that we all want 1917 to win, and it will win.
Okay. Any snubs on that?
I do think that Ford v Ferrari does have a chance, so you could go between the two.
Okay.
Well, Matt, speaking of Avengers Endgame, Best Visual Effects, it is nominated along with The Irishman, The Lion King, 1917, and The Rise of Skywalker.
I'll admit I'm petty here. Come on, throw Marvel a bone. It's been an achievement that they were able to pull off all these movies and have them all work. Could they just get this, for God's sakes?
Avengers Endgame is kind of the safe choice here. It's a way to honor that whole series, even though it's maybe not for Best Picture or anything like that.
I mean, the final fight scene.
Yeah, that's fine. I'm not super impressed by the CGI in that, just because I feel like it's in basically every superhero movie. But sure, let it win.
I cried all 3 times that I saw Endgame in theaters, and so I feel like my idea of the visual effects is still a bit blurry from that, but I think the de-aging in Irishman was really impressive too, but I have to go with Endgame.
I thought it was a little creepy, the digital de-aging. There's a little uncanny valley, and that's always dicey.
The lips are always kind of weird, right?
Yeah, I like The Irishman's CGI a lot. It takes a little bit, but you get into it. I think it is a little controversial, though. I don't think everyone loved it, so I don't see that pulling off the win.
It's one of the things where I get upset. It's very gimmicky. And that's where part of me doesn't like 1917 as well, is that it's the one tracking shot. It's the de-aging movie. I just don't like it when a movie can be condensed into its one sort of gimmick, if you will.
So my pick here is 1917. And I do think, you do have to deal with the fact that it's a gimmick, but it's on such a macro level that I think it deserves the recognition for it.
It is, but I mean, we've seen it before in other movies. This just happens to be during a war, and I think that always films nicely. So I'm not overly impressed. I think it's going to age well, but it's a very safe bet.
All right, so in terms of what will win, I still say Avengers Endgame. Although, like I keep saying, if all of a sudden 1917 has this big momentum, they could take this as well.
I mean, and you do keep saying that, and I'd be curious to see if that happens, because I think part of me deep down, they might try to sparse it out and give out as many to different people as opposed to having a runaway.
I get that idea in theory, but people are just voting. They don't get to just choose. They're voting for their favorite for each category. So even if they might try to do that, it might not work out when you actually tally the votes. All right, so we are split on that one. Let's move on to Best Animated Feature Film. The nominees are How to Train Your Dragon: The Hidden World, I Lost My Body, Klaus, Missing Link, and Toy Story 4. I love the How to Train Your Dragon series.
We know.
It did win in, I think, 2014 for the second movie. And I just think these movies are just so beautifully animated, and the movies are good.
I haven't seen any of those, right?
I know, it really hurts me.
I am really big Leica Studios fanboy, and I would love to endorse Missing Link for this, but the animation is beautiful as always. It's this stop motion animation, but the movie itself is just not great. It doesn't deserve it. So my favorite here is actually I Lost My Body.
There's been 19 years that Best Animated Feature has been a category at the Oscars, and a Pixar movie has been nominated 14 out of those 19 times, and it's only lost 3 times. So as much as Toy Story 4 was like meh to me, and I thought Klaus was like an unexpected, really sweet, cute, well done movie, I think it's going to go to Toy Story 4.
I always struggle with this award because I'm not exactly sure what we're awarding. Is it the best movie that happens to be animated, or is it the best animation in a movie?
That's a great point.
And if we're going with the best movie, I could see them picking Toy Story 4 just because Pixar is such a powerhouse, and Toy Story 4 is good. I like that movie a lot. But if we're going with animation, the Toy Story 4 animation style is very, the same as what we've expected from Pixar. New. Versus something like Missing Link or Klaus is very different. Even I Lost My Body is a very different kind of animation.
I like to see a technical award for that. They could easily do that, I think.
You do bring that up, and I would like to point out that I'm guessing most of the Academy voters don't know how to handle that either.
There are animation awards every year. They have their own award ceremony. They're called the Annies. They happened earlier this year. They have 2 separate awards. Klaus won for Best Feature, and I Lost My Body won for Best Independent Feature.
Interesting.
And the Annie Award winner has gone on to win the Oscars 6 of the last 8 years in terms of the feature film. Wow. So if you look on Vegas odds right now, Toy Story 4 is the favorite, but Klaus won the Annie Award. So if you're looking to make kind of a sneaky bet, that might be your one to make.
I always like a sneaky bet.
Maybe a little Uncut Gems parlay bet right in there. Maybe mix it in with some basketball bets and you might make a fortune.
I literally don't know what that means.
Best animated short film. We're moving to some short film categories here. The problem with short films is they're not always available to watch. I've seen, I think, 3 of these. Have you guys seen some of these already? Couple?
Yeah, I just watched 2 of them.
Okay. So the nominees are Daughter, Hair Love, Kit Bull, Memorable, and Sister. Of the ones I've seen, Hair Love is definitely my favorite. It's the most charming. It's the animation style is really fun. It hits hard when it hits.
It was just a really sweet, like it wasn't like a tearjerker, but it was just really sweet and well done, and it had a nice message. I read that it was actually financed through Kickstarter. Interesting. Which is kind of cool.
I've only seen that one and Kit Bull, but I really did enjoy Hair Love.
And it's on YouTube right now if you want to check it out. It's only about 5 minutes long.
I'm a little surprised they're not easily accessible considering how short they are. You would think that they would just throw them out there for people to see.
Some of them are foreign films, so it's a little harder sometimes with country restrictions on different things.
Interesting.
But, yeah. Interesting. So we're all picking Hair Love on that?
Yeah.
I will say Kit Bull only because it's the only one I saw. So I'm banking hard on that one.
Hair Love is the favorite right now, so that might be your pick. We're going on to Best Documentary. This is a documentary feature film. The nominees are American Factory, The Cave, The Edge of Democracy, Forsama, and Honeyland. All very heavy films. The Cave and Forsama are both about doctors in Syria, which is interesting. I'll just say American Factory won the Directors Guild Award for Best Documentary. A lot of them are really good. I actually really like The Edge of Democracy. I think that's a very important film. But I think American Factory for me is the more resonant film. It's on Netflix. It has a very powerful message, and it's very topical to what's going on in today's world.
I was really quite pleased with it. It was good. It was powerful.
I would also say Honeyland is worth checking out. It's on Hulu right now. It's a very unique story. The other documentaries are about big, grand ideas or events. Honeyland is just about a small beekeeper in North Macedonia, and she tries to survive. It's a really fascinating documentary. So that would be my number 2, but all of these are solid documentaries.
With Edge of Democracy, I thought that was a little heavy. I started it and then unfortunately did not get back to finishing it. I did enjoy what I was seeing, but it is a lot to sit through.
Yeah, it's all about Brazilian politics and how they've kind of gone downhill in the last 10 years. All right, well, I think American Factory is the favorite. It's also produced by the Obamas, so you have a little bit of a star power thing right there.
They'd be thrilled to get them on TV just for that moment.
I don't think they'll be at the ceremony or on TV or anything, but still, there's some star power there.
I think, too, just in terms of not even thinking about the quality of the film, but just of what the people on the Academy have seen, American Factory is a good bet to win.
Yeah. In terms of snubs, I think we're all pretty in agreement on this. Apollo 11 is not on this list.
Do we know why? Is there a reason behind why it might not have gotten the nom?
Because the Academy is garbage.
I mean, the only reason I can think of is that the footage is older, so maybe they didn't think it was that much of
That's not acceptable.
It's really not. they don't do a lot in terms of like telling a narrative story, or they don't have interviews in it. It's literally just
What happened?
this is what happened, and it's brilliant. But maybe that's the only reason they didn't put it on.
I think that helps it that there's no. It's just in real time.
It certainly helps the movie. I don't know if it helps it the award chances.
And you saying that it's old footage, it's some of the most beautifully restored footage I think I've ever seen.
It is far and away the best documentary I've seen this year.
I mean, a couple times I thought they had recreated scenes. That's how high quality the restoration was.
The other one I really wanted on here, I knew it wasn't going to be on there, but Rolling Thunder Review, the Martin Scorsese documentary of Bob Dylan's concert tour in the 1970s. It'd be kind of fun if Scorsese was nominated in 2 categories, and I think that's such an awesome concert documentary.
And was that one where it was footage that he'd done before and put it together?
So it was footage that was unused, shot by a different director in the 70s. Scorsese took it, cleaned it up, and then also interviewed people today to kind of piece together the story.
Interesting.
Definitely check it out. It's awesome. All right, documentary short. I have seen 4 of the 5 of these, but they are In the Absence, Learning to Skateboard in a War Zone, Life Overtakes Me, St. Louis Superman, and Walk, Run, Cha-Cha. Of the ones I've seen, I personally liked Walk, Run, Cha-Cha the best. It's a smaller movie about a Vietnam couple, how they escaped Vietnam in the 70s, and now they use dance, ballroom dance in the U.S. to kind of reconnect. It's a really sweet story. But I think Learning to Skateboard in a War Zone is the movie that's probably going to have a lot of momentum here. It's very modern. It's very, important.
I unfortunately missed all of these and am of no use to you.
I too would like to apologize.
That's fine. They're hard to find, and some of them aren't. They're kind of boring.
I love the honesty.
Yeah, they are. Generally, I feel like the Academy, they go in all different directions on these short films. I think it's probably best to bet on the most like important or like newsworthy documentary. That's why I don't think Walk, Run, Cha-Cha would win this kind of award. It's a very small movie. But Learning to Skateboard in a War Zone and Life Overtakes Me are both about important issues that I think would have a better shot.
I started Life Overtakes Me and I got really, really sad.
Yeah,
and
it's very depressing.
Now I'm here.
All right, live action short film. This is our final category, guys. We've made it. The nominees are Brotherhood, Nefta Football Club, The Neighbor's Window, Saria, and A Sister. I'll admit I've only seen 3 of these. Of the ones I've seen, my favorite is Nefta Football Club. I don't think it has a chance to win, but it's a comedy. It's rare to find a comedy in these short films. I feel like they're all so serious. And if you can find it, it's on Vimeo for free. You can watch it. It is hilarious and a really fun short film.
I only managed to get to The Neighbor's Window for this category, and without having seen the others, I can say this one wasn't my favorite. It's fine. It
does feature the national song though, so that definitely helps it.
That is true, but it didn't strike me as something that was really Oscar worthy.
Having seen some of these at least, I think Brotherhood is the one to beat. I didn't like Brotherhood at all. I thought it was actually kind of bad. It had some weird narrative things that I was not a fan of. However, it is the most, the movie about the most things. It's about a family in Tunisia that one of their sons goes and joins ISIS, and then he comes back. There's a lot of weird things going on in this movie, but I think this is the one that the Academy voters will deem as important and honor. So Brotherhood is the one I would pick.
Okay.
All right, so those are all the categories. I know that was kind of a marathon there. We walked through it, but I'm going to go quickly through the official Oscars 2020 ballot. You can find this on the Oscars website, and I'm just going to go through and list what we think is going to win as a group. If we have some dissension, we can chime in, but this is the order that they have the categories in. Actor in a leading role, we feel like it's going to be Joaquin Phoenix for Joker. Actor in a supporting role, we're saying Brad Pitt for Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Actress in a leading role, we are saying Renee Zellweger for Judy. Actress in a supporting role, we're saying Laura Dern for Marriage Story. Animated feature film, we are split between Klaus and Toy Story 4. Cinematography, 1917. Costume design, Little Women. Directing, 1917. Documentary feature, American Factory. Documentary short subject. It's a toss-up, I think, between Learning to Skateboard in a War Zone and Life Overtakes Me. Film editing, a toss-up between Ford versus Ferrari and Parasite. International feature film, Parasite. Makeup and hairstyling, Bombshell. Original score, Joker. Original song, I'm Gonna Love Me Again from Rocket Man. Best picture, 1917. Production design, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Animated short film, Hair Love. Live action short film, Brotherhood. Sound editing, 1917. Sound mixing, 1917. Visual effects, Avengers Endgame. Adapted Screenplay, Little Women. Original Screenplay, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Any thoughts, final thoughts on that?
I think that sounds like a winner.
The four of us are all in the same Oscar pool, so I hope we all bet the exact same and split it.
I know we'll have different.
What do we do if we have a tie?
I would say in general, there's usually 4 or 5 small surprises during the Oscars.
Absolutely.
So even though we feel pretty confident in all of these, there are going to be some weird things going on. Maybe it's a big category like Best Actor or something like that. Maybe it's a short film. Something weird's going to happen. It always does.
And just in case we have a situation like last year, just remember the best picture isn't always the best picture.
Yeah, there's always some upsets.
I really hope that everyone who is in our Oscar pool listened to this podcast and we all have the exact same brackets.
That would be pretty magical.
All right, let's wrap it up. Great to have you guys here. We'll watch the Oscars together on February 9th. Really looking forward to it. In the end, the Oscars don't matter, but they are kind of fun. All right, everyone, thanks for listening. Check out our other videos on here. On the blog, the Cinema Composite blog, we are having a couple of year-end pieces. I just wrote my top 25 movie list with some more details on what those movies are. And Tom here, what are you going to be writing, Tom?
I will do my annual year-end superlatives where I make up a bunch of categories to talk about movies I like.
That sounds great. So check it out. We will see you soon.